let's take a closer look behind that mask. Ha!
No,
Give me the
get
mask!
off of me.
Give me the mask! Ha ha! Got it! Wait. What? Why are you still wearing a mask? No, wait. Why are you still wearing the same mask?
I don't know what you're talking about. This is a completely different mask that looks super different and completely justifies being special edition.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a Remixed review. Today we're taking a look at every alternate and combo model for the year of 2003 for the BIONICLE line. As usual, a few disclaimers before we begin. This will all be my personal opinion based off my experiences with these models. Additionally, if you have any comments, questions, critiques, or maybe you want to point out a mistake I made, because let's be honest, I've done that in the last two, I'm probably going to do it in this one too. Head on down to the comments below, provided we haven't been copped, or head on over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. Greatly appreciated. I love any feedback you have to offer me. So, without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the Matoran. We're going to start small and get to the bigger stuff as time goes on. So, let's take the 6 Matoran here and remix! Oh my gosh! So, these are normal combiner models, I suppose. They're on the back of, I think, either the box or the instructions, and as such, there are no instructions. I built these just looking at the one picture, so I hope they're accurate, but I have honestly no way of knowing. Use all 6 Matoran in these designs. BS1 calls them Matoran Combiner, so take that how you will. All in all, I'm not impressed. I don't really like these pretty much whatsoever. Functionality-wise, you have the normal Matoran gear function in the back. The legs move, the arms move, and, well, the torso moves for the dog thing. I mean, its neck moves. I think it's a dog. Maybe it's a llama. I'm not honestly sure. It's really abstract. It's honestly really weird. The color scheme is jumbled and a mess, which is not a surprise given the Matoran used. And there's really nothing interesting about them. So, not a fan. Let's move on. So, with these 3 Matoran, we're going to move on to the Kabaya Matoran combo. So let's remix! See, I was so hopeful. This isn't a whole heck of a lot better. It's, I think, the goofier of the two, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's interesting looking. You have these big googly eyes because of the Coley pucks, and outside of that, I'm not big on the rest of it. The neck articulation is only side to side, and even then it's limited. Functionality is standard, having the Coley Matoran function. Its legs have articulation that gives it a few unique points, such as 2 in the knee area, but overall the color scheme is still kind of messy. It doesn't look great together, and there's nothing interesting with it. It's not the great with balancing either, given its feet are just Matoran heads, and really, I can't recommend anyone makes this unless you're just kind of looking for a laugh. Additionally, on the back, you can see it has one other puck on its rear end, and the instructions are essentially telling you, well, you can put it on either side. The right or the left doesn't really matter. So that's a little bit ambiguous. I'm not a big fan of that. However, I suppose it allows you to make it your own. Ooh, big difference. Regardless, not super big on it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend anyone build it. So let's go ahead and move on. Next, I want to get these combos out of the way. So let's go ahead and take 2 sets from 2002 and 2 Bohrok-Kal and remix! So this is a first and I think an only for BIONICLE, taking sets from one year and combining them with sets from another. As you can see here, you have the Toe of Stone and the Toe of Earth mixed with the Bohrok-Kal of Gravity and the Bohrok-Kal of Plasma. And they are, gosh dang, they're so close. They're so close to being really quaint and really cool. As far as functions are concerned, they don't really have any. I guess the Bohrok faceplate does click on in the back, but outside of that, they have minimal articulation. As you can see here, they are also, or at least one of them is also using the black pins that I have somehow managed to neglect mentioning for the last 6 or so years that come with the Takuto Nova. As far as their appearance is concerned, they're very unique. Their stature isn't really like anything else, and I like the use of the weapons. I think that their overall silhouette is very unique, and I like that. The color schemes, additionally, also are very nice. They're very earthy colors, earthy tones, and the silver is, of course, there to look kind of armory and whatnot. What I don't like are how flimsy the connections are for these models, specifically the arms and the legs. If you look at the arms, because of how the torso assembly is done, the arms are trying to push their way out of the torso. They're trying to at least jump out because it's not a solid connection, and if you try and push them in, well, it's going to stress the pieces. So one of these arms is going to come out. Additionally, on one of them, the head kind of wobbles back and forth because it's using a connection that isn't solidly in there. I mean, it's connected solidly, but it's not a axle connection. It is a pin connection. And finally, down here on the legs, you can see, hopefully, that the Nova armor is not allowing this handpiece to fully fit on the axle. It's on there, but it's not on there solidly. So it's gonna come off if you are not careful. While I like their stature and their appearance, I don't like the build. They're honestly just kinda flimsy if you look real close and really at the details. Kinda sorta illegal builds. They're just not solid connections. I don't like that, and it really brings them down in my opinion. Let's go ahead and move on. Next is this Inspirational Combiner. You're gonna take these two sets here and remix! So I was reasonably on board with this figure. I've seen it in pictures for years. I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. I just saw it and went, oh, that looks kind of bizarre, but not too offensive, right? Looks like a mock that someone young would make. Well, then I built it, and issues became apparent quickly. For starters, the balance is terrible, because those are not solid feet. They're solid builds, as in they're solid connections, but the feet are flimsy. The points of contact with the feet and the ground are very small, and this figure is top-heavy, so the balance is terrible. Additionally, I don't like how the legs are constructed. It just looks haphazard and awkward. The thing that really upsets me, though, about this model is the head. The model image itself uses a different Bohrok-Kal than the one I have here. I figured, well, that probably won't matter. Granted, I hadn't noticed it up until making this, but I digress. Trying to put the Bohrok-Kal there and then put the head on is nigh impossible. That's not a sturdy connection, neither to the head and neck, nor to the mask and head. If you hold this upside down, there's a really high chance the head will fall off or the mask will fall off because the Bohrok-Kal is right there, and I don't know why it's there. Its inclusion was completely unnecessary. Outside of that, the gear function doesn't seem to work too well. I'm not totally sure why, but it kind of only does this. Outside of that, it's just an awkward looking model. It does look like something a young builder would make, and that's fine if you're a young builder making this to try and enjoy. It can obviously be remedied somewhat by taking the Bohrok-Kal out, but I'm not reviewing fixes, I'm reviewing how they're presented to us. Additionally, this has no instructions, or at least none officially, so I could only go off of fan-made instructions. All in all, I really, really do not like this model. I do not recommend anyone build it, and I'm excited to move on. Alright, let's look at things that are a little more officially LEGO. That's right, let's take the Bohrok-Kal and remix! Now these are fascinating. So unlike the prior models we just looked at, the ones that were inspirational models, or the Kabaya combos, or even the two Matoran combos that LEGO actually made, these two here are canon. The rest are not, but these two are. However, only one of them actually appeared in the story, that being, of course, Kaita Ja, the one comprised of Levi-Kal, Gala-Kal, and Korak-Kal. Let's look over their functions, starting with Ja. Ja, unfortunately, is the weaker of the two, which is a great disappointment to me because I wanted to like it more than the two. It showed up in the story, it's comprised of my favorite color Bohrok and my first BIONICLE set Gala-Kal, so I was really excited to see how this is. Unfortunately, it's not great in my opinion. The structural build is peculiar. There's nothing too offensive about it, it's kind of short in stature to get some good balancing poses on it. However, the torso itself is a function. Its head, where normal Bohrok would have it, is an upper torso, and the two connect via Bohrok necks and rubber bands. Unfortunately, there's no way to keep it upright like the instructions show, And if you want to have it back, you have to be careful because it very easily lunges forward into this much shorter, stouter, stockier stance. Other than that, it's mostly inoffensive. I think the head build is really creative. The arms are completely fine, and I think the feet are neat as well. On a Kaita Za, this one I think is my favorite of the two. The arms are just Bohrok functions, and I think they work really well, of course. They connect very interestingly. I like how that looks. Granted, it's hard to put them in different poses because the arms are trying to work against each other, and they're trying to kind of pop off of the torso. The feet are, of course, fine. I really like how it uses the Bohrok feet to connect to the torso as well. That's kind of fun. And I just think it looks better as a Bohrok-Kal combo. It's very unique, and I find it very interesting how they were still able to come up with unique designs for the Bohrok build, combining 3 at a time. Overall, these are interesting. They're a fascinating look into what Kal combos could look like, and more importantly, what Bohrok set build combos could look like after the ones we saw in 2002. But with them out of the way, I'm ready for some Rahkshi. Let's move on. Let's start off strong. All 6 Rahkshi into 2 combos you probably know pretty well. Let's remix! These, to me, are massively iconic. The comic that they showed up in was the first comic I think I got. Not officially from LEGO, but the first one I actually received. As we can see here, it's Kaita Za and Kaita Vo. They're both canon. As I just said, they showed up in a comic, so let's look at them individually. Kaita Za is my clear favorite. Of course, it's the one that always seemed like a cooler build to me. It was the more stable of the two, and it includes the Rahkshi of my favorite color. The build itself is mostly alright. It's pretty stable. The legs can be a little goofy at times because it's 2 sets of limbs comprising 1 leg, and those can kind of start to angle apart. The arms are, of course, pretty fine, and the stature of it is also alright. There's a little bit of ambiguity in the torso because of how the legs are connected. That isn't made entirely clear in the instructions, and it's honestly a testament to how much better instructions are nowadays, that you can very easily figure out builds based on what they're telling you. But the color scheme is alright. It's Christmas colors, so if you like that, you're gonna like this a lot. I don't know why the red Rahkshi head is on the white spine, and so on and so forth, and it's all kind of jumbled up. However, it's not totally offensive. Overall, I'm a fan of this. It has a few issues like the feet. I don't like how those kind of claw scoop things, the ones that comprise the Rahkshi backs, kind of fold inward when you pick it up. But other than that, I like this model a lot. Kaita Vo is a really cool concept that I don't think got the best execution. Kaita Vo is comprised of 2 components, the dog and the rider. Let's go ahead and take the rider off for a moment to look at the dog. This is the part where it's kind of a cool concept, a Rahkshi dog or Rahkshi horse or whatever you want to call it, a creature of sorts. I like the 4-legged look. It's kind of a cool beast. You have the spine that kind of goes on both sides, and you have the tail, which of course you can have whip around and what have you. Unfortunately, it's really flimsy. The legs are tall and lanky, which isn't an issue. However, the torso, it's got all sorts of weird things sticking out of it. It's also dependent on the Rahkshi function, so you're not going to have a lot of opportunity to balance it. It's going to flop from side to side. And while that can lend itself well to certain poses, it's also difficult to keep in a particular pose. Additionally, the Rahkshi head is inherently going to look down most of the time, so this is the most you can have it looking up or straight forward. Onto the rider, it's basically the upper half of the black Rahkshi with some tiny legs. It's kind of a funny looking build. There's nothing too offensive about it. It's just goofy. I don't have a whole lot to say. Finally, you can put the Rahkshi midget on the beast, and you sit him on the back, which are comprised of Rahkshi legs, which I thought was clever. Unfortunately, if you do pose the Rahkshi beast in a particular way, you run the risk of kind of nudging the rider off. It will eventually kind of pop off, and that's not great. They don't meld together too well. That about does it. I like them. I like Za a lot more. I feel like it's the more solid of the two. Its stature is a lot better. And I like the concept of Vo. Unfortunately, I just feel the execution is lacking, and I'm not sure if it's just because of how it's designed, or because this is the only way you can really design something like this. But with that done, let's move on to some more unusual combos. The ones inspired by BIONICLE and the Kabaya combos. This next combo is super fascinating. Take these two Rahkshi and remix! This is one of the inspirational combos. Taking those two Rahkshi and making this kind of split down the half, very almost Japanese looking Rahkshi combo model. And this one is completely non-canon, so it doesn't factor into the conversation regarding that at all. Let's get into the build. So on paper, literally looking at images, this is a really cool design. And I still think it's a super cool design. It looks very almost feudal. It's super unique. I really like how the colors are split right down the middle. I like how you have things kind of coming off of it, almost like clothing or cloth. The twin staves also look super cool. So it's a really neat look. It's a very half and half split, cool design. Unfortunately, the articulation is very bad. The legs barely move forward or backward whatsoever, so it's hard getting it into dynamic poses. Some of these things that are sticking off of it look a little awkward, and additionally, the arms don't have the greatest points of connection. Unfortunately, age does not do the friction for these any good, so the arms can be a little floppy at times. Additionally, this is about as far down as you can put these shoulders. Any more, and you're going to have this spine flip open. On the back, this is how the head is stuck on. Now granted, this has no official instructions, and I went off fan instructions to make this, so maybe it's connected another way. However, this is what I have, and as such, the head doesn't go forward very much at all. And additionally, it's kind of wedged in there. Not a whole lot of options for mobility. All in all, this is another one of the combo models that look really good in one pose, mainly because you can't get it into any others. Great looking concept, again, mixed feelings on the execution. Alright, so this is the next combo model for the inspirational builds. You take these three Rahkshi and remix! So any complaint that I had about the prior model is dwarfed by this one. This one is rough. The build itself was fine. It was not challenging making this model. It's just really ugly, in my opinion. I'm not big on the color scheme. It has the earthy tones, I suppose, but then you have the white, and I'm not a whole big fan of this color scheme. The legs, while they don't look super offensive, to me kind of look really dorky, but the biggest issue is in the upper torso. For starters, the arms are very front-heavy, and as such, with the old joints, they don't hold up very well at all. Additionally, the head is kind of wedged in here, doesn't have a whole lot of options for mobility, and it's stuck in between these weird-looking knife hand things. I don't know what these are supposed to be. Is the head supposed to be the actual head, or are those supposed to be eyes, and it's supposed to be like a mouth? I'm not sure. The torso looks really goofy. I don't like how any of this looks, to be honest. The stature is weird. The build itself looks kind of incomplete in areas, and really, I just don't like its appearance. It doesn't have any kind of a visual appeal to me whatsoever. As such, I'm very glad to go ahead and move on. Alright, next up, we're going into the two Rahkshi builds, which are combos using only two Rahkshi. We're going to take these two and remix! So this one is actually much better. So this is a Kabaya combo model, and this one is kind of neat. It's kind of got a shorter, stockier stature, and it's also got that kind of split color scheme thing going on from one of the other ones we just looked at. Color scheme wise, I quite enjoy it. It's nothing too unusual or offensive to me, and build wise, it's a lot better than the last one we just looked at. It's still a little peculiar, especially in the torso area, because the legs are comprised of these very long sections, or at least comparatively to the rest of the build. It's got a short torso, but in length, longer legs, so that's why you have to keep it kind of down like this to hide that, and I think that does work out really well. An issue I do kind of have with it is on this left arm here. I don't like this connection. It just feels really sketchy to me. I don't have too much to say on this. I just like it better than the last, and it's not the worst one that I've seen thus far. Alright, last Rahkshi combo. You take these two Rahkshi and remix! This one is definitely my favorite Rahkshi combo of the group that we've looked at. Again, it's a Kabaya combo, and I think that it has a really great look. The build is also really fun, at least it was to me. The color scheme is pretty straightforward. It's green and white, which usually I'm not a fan of. However, I make an exception for this because it's mostly evened out by all of the gray. The hands, I feel, are the best iteration. There's not a whole lot of weight on them, so they can kind of move and have these kind of fun poses. They look almost like fingers at the end. Appearance-wise, it looks like he has these two daggers sitting on his side that are kind of pointed back, so he can like bring them out when things get really nasty. On the back, you have these two legs that are supporting the two spine pieces. I'm not biggest fan of this. I wish it was just one on the back. However, it isn't the worst thing. It's mostly the fact that they're uneven spine pieces. They're never really going to line up. Finally, something that looking at photos I thought I was going to hate immensely, but actually grew to not really mind that much, would be the torso construction. It's a very thin looking build if you look at it straight on, and honestly, the stuff on the back really helps mitigate that. The biggest issue with this combo is the fact that its legs don't move forward very much. There's not a whole lot of great articulation, and it's very difficult to, once again, get it into dynamic poses. If you don't mind that too much, or don't really intend to, and just want to keep it in the one pose, then you should be perfectly fine and have very little issue with this model. Okay, those are all the canister sets, and that's basically everything that's non-canon as well. So with the exception of the mainline combos, such as the Bohrok-Kal combos and the Rahkshi Kaida, everything else is non-canon. So let's go ahead, move on to the Titans. Gosh dang it, this build was irritating to start. I don't like taking apart 3 Titans and mashing them into one. Regardless, you take these 3 sets and remix! Oh my goodness. So this is a fascinating model for a variety of reasons. For starters, BSO1 has coined the term Makuta Nui and says that technically speaking, this is a canon build, in the sense that it's one of the many forms Makuta can take. As it turns out, many fans in 2003 thought that this was actually a depiction of the Ash Bear, specifically Grolok from Mask of Light. In fact, in Bionicle Maze of Shadows, the Game Boy Advanced game, released in I think 2005, this was the model used to depict what was called a Grolok Ash Bear in that game. Unfortunately, it is not a Grolok Ash Bear, it is just one of Makuta's many forms. Now granted, I say unfortunately, but it might be more fortunate than anything else. Let's get into the build. The torso itself is mostly fine. It's not that gappy, it's a mostly sturdy build. It's held up by the 2 legs that are basically just Makuta legs with some modifications. That leads to some issues because the Makuta legs and feet aren't the most stable, they're not greatly balanced, and this is a very top-heavy model. Moving up, we have a head which has a function in it. You can move the jaw up and down using one of the rubber bands included in Jala and Gecko, and so that's kind of a neat function there, very reminiscent of the 2001 Rahi. Moving back a bit, we have another function with the arms. If you turn this on the back, you can actually get the arms to move in a very Rahkshi-esque motion. It's also shared by Makuta in 2003. And finally, on the left arm, you have this kind of claw-looking thing. It's a huge claw. You can put the blades in, or you can bring them out for some extra reach. Now, the other arm is actually very interesting. For starters, the articulation in the elbow is not great depending on how you have it posed, and the instructions and promotional artwork are very fuzzy on how you should have it posed. But worse than that is the hand. You see, the hand as I have it shown here is actually great, and depending on which page of the instructions you're going off of, is also built wrong. You see, all promotional art will show this construction here, allowing you to move the upper 2 fingers and the 3rd lower finger independent of all one another. The instructions, however, initially show you as locking the thumb in place, making it immobile so that you cannot move it independent of the others. However, just a few pages later, it shows the thumb as moving, where it shouldn't be. I opted to go this route since I will make exceptions if the promotional art shows it certain ways, and the instructions even show it doing this itself. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I've misbuilt it based on the instructions, but I've shown a picture here, and to me it looks like it's locked in place. If there is a correction to be made here, this would probably be the place. Overall, this is a very top-heavy model. It also doesn't really look like a Grolok Ash Bear. It has things that make it reminiscent of one. However, I've always imagined them as orange, because in Mask of Light, the Ash Bear was orange. This has burnt orange, however, the face doesn't really look like it, the legs certainly don't, and it has 2 different sizes of claw. All in all, it's kind of an awkward combo model. It's only 1/3 as good as any of the 3 sets. I feel like it's Makuta with a bunch of different top-heavy stuff on top of it that vaguely look like a creature, and that's really about it. I give it props for some of the functionality, and I think some of it does look kind of cool, but overall it just feels very awkward and kind of clunky to me, and I won't be building it again. Alright, many of you have waited a very long time for this, basically ever since I started these reviews. We take these two sets right here and remix! That's right, everyone, it's Takuto Nova. Many of you who are Bionicle fans, either subscribers of this channel, members of the community, or people just passing through, probably know what this is. It's the combination between Takuto Nova and Makuta from Bionicle Mask of Light. More appropriately, in this instance, it's the combination between Takuto Nova's Usanui and Makuta, but that's a little more nitpicky than anything else. Before I get too much further, I'd like to thank my friends Andre and Nathan for this. They actually gifted this to me, the mask and the set itself, back in 2018. I am immensely grateful. Thank you both so much. Additionally, this would not have been possible without the Bionicle archives. Go ahead and check a link out in the description right below. Onto the build. Much like the Makuta Nui we just looked at, this set is kind of just Makuta from 2003 with a bunch of add-ons. Functionality-wise, he has a few things. First, the legs, which are basically just Makuta's legs that are a little shinier, and as such, they have definitely some balancing issues. Going up a bit, he does have the usual waist function feature from Makuta of 2003, no surprise there. Going up further, he actually has shoulder articulation, however it's incredibly limited. You can pose his shoulders in one of a few different ways. You can either have them up, or you can have them pointing right down. So there is a little bit of motion there. It works very well with the arms. I like the option to be able to do something like that. However, do note they will only ever move in tandem with each other. And finally, on the back, you have these kind of spoke things, these blades on his back. You can bring them up, or you can push them down. Between these and the shoulders, you actually have a little bit of variation in how you can make him look. You can give him kind of a less armored look that looks maybe a little bit more stocky or more of an ornamental look, which makes him look a little more visually imposing. Additionally, it's worth mentioning the arms. The arm construction to me looks really awkward. It just seems almost unfinished in some ways. They're longer arms and they connect to a longer staff. And when I say connect, I mean it's a connection. The staff is built into the arms, or at least one of them for sure. It's not like Makuta of 03, which has his staff as a different component that you can take off. The staff itself is obviously much larger, and it's a staff. I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about it. It's a design. I'm not fond of the design too much, but it works for the model, I suppose. Let's move on to the part everyone has really been wanting me to talk about for the longest time. See, this is a combo model. You can get the individual set, and you'll have instructions in the individual instruction booklets. However, LEGO also released this set twice. Once as set number 3287 Takuto Nova. This came basically as just a 2-in-1 box with just the pieces you see here. However, it was also released as set number 10201 Takuto Nova, and it included one extra piece, the movie edition Kraken. Now this mask is fascinating for so many reasons. For starters, you can see it's actually quite glossy. It's very shiny and very smooth looking. It doesn't look like most other masks that use an axle to connect. It's far more reminiscent of masks from 2001 to 2002, which are far glossier. Additionally, not a whole heck of a lot has changed except for this face. See, the normal Kraken is a much duller looking black, and also has details which, if you think about it, are very reminiscent of the Evoki. On the other side, you have a mask which smooths it all out, and is supposed to emulate the movie Kraken from Mask of Light and Legends of Metru Nui. I'll include a cutout here, maybe you can see the resemblance. I might try and do a video on this later, however I feel strongly that the movie edition Kraken should have been the representation of the default Kraken. This should be our normal one, and the normal Kraken we're familiar with should be Takuto Nova's mask. This one should have been the special edition because it looks like a mixture of the Kraken and the Evoki. So how does this mask change his set? Basically not at all. He has a special edition mask that I feel belongs more on the normal Makuta set than it does anything else, but I mean, here you have it. It is entirely 100% optional, and in my opinion, does not warrant its own designation as a separate set. This is a combo model, which you are being made to believe is its own model specifically designed to be its own set. But it isn't. It's a combo model that LEGO smartly decided to sell as its own figure. You're really better off buying that and just building Makuta and Takuto Nova. So at the end of the day, I'm not the biggest fan of Takuto Nova. I think that it's an interesting concept, but it's just Makuta with a bunch of stuff attached to him. It makes him more top-heavy. I don't feel like the torso build is really all that great. It looks really awkward. You have things kind of jutting out from him. You have an axle that's jutting all the way through. You have the hand pieces that are on his sides for some reason. The legs are mostly alright. The issue is the gear function and the legs themselves give him a lot of trouble posing. It gives him a lot of trouble staying in one specific place. You don't have a lot of choice when the legs are looking one way and the gear function swings his upper torso to another direction, completely opposite of how you wanted him. All in all, it's interesting, but I'm not the biggest fan. I like Makuta 03. This feels like a lot of extra stuff kind of just chucked on him to try and convince you that it's a set on its own when it's not. If this were to be compared to other sets, I would rank it below Toa Matanui, which historically is a very unpopular set to begin with. Alright, and that about does it. Another month, another year down. Overall, 2003 is fascinating. It has a lot more non-canon combo models than 2002 and 2001 did, and I'm not a big fan of basically any of them. They all do unique things, and I think a lot of the looks of some of them, specifically the Kabaya models, are very nice. I think they're really cool appearances. It's just I don't feel like they're very good models. They don't play very well, and old age does not do justice to the friction of those joints, which really brings them down in my opinion. For all the canon stuff, it's mostly hit or miss. The Kaita Ja was a little disappointing to me. Kaita Vo has always been really awkward. The Makuta Nui is really awkward, and Takuto Nova is, to me, a sales pitch, and I'm not buying it. But that's it. That has been 2003. What do you all think about the combo models released during that year? Let me know in the comments below or on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. I really do appreciate reading all the comments. They're very interesting to me. Alright, that is the first of the combo sets that I have reviewed. I've got 3 more to go, and that starts once again next month. So join me then for the 2004 combo review. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Farewell.